good coaches understand that we all need good coaching.
Your conscious awareness that we are, sentient human beings and we do have choice.
So that's the advantage of a coach or consultant coming in. They can see those things.
Awareness is this beautiful, peaceful, loving undercurrent.
You should help people tell their stories.
That real human connection has never been any more important.
The work is ongoing.
Hello, everybody. Hi, Sam. Jenny LinkedIn user over there is Kate Turner. Hi, Kate. Thanks for joining us. Anybody else that's coming in, let us know you're here. Thanks for joining us. It's Wednesday. It's time for a Tilted Bench. I almost made the terrible mistake before live started of forgetting to take a sip of my coffee, but I remembered, so I'm ready. For those of you who don't know, Tilted Bench is a show that I do every Wednesday at noon Eastern. It's a show about coaching. I talk with coaches. We talk about what they do, why it's important, how it works, and spend some time, kind of camping out on some interesting themes and ideas that they have. And Jenny Maxwell, it is so nice to have you here today. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
It is a pleasure. Do you want to go ahead and get us kicked off here? Tell us a little bit about you and about the kind of work that you do.
Well, before we go there, I'm glad you enjoyed your coffee because my coffee maker broke this morning. I can't believe I'm actually this jolly without a cup of coffee.
You're an inspiration.
I set it all up to go and then I dropped my kid to school and I came back and I hit go. And the next thing I'm the light was on, but I couldn't hear the dripping. What's going on? So I turned it off and turned it back on again, but it is dead. So I need to get a new coffee maker. So I'm glad you enjoyed your coffee. I'll be going to get myself a cup afterwards.
And I'll empathize with you there. Over the past 4 or 5 years, I've had 2 different drip coffee makers that died on me. And of course, they die in the morning making the morning pot. So both times it was this, kind of not freak out, but you adapt, but it's hard to adapt without coffee.
Well, it's just one little pleasure in the morning. I love a cup of coffee in the morning. I enjoy it. It's part of my routine. And then it's the machine breaks and I wouldn't mind, but you're so right. I had more than one coffee maker and now they're all broken over the last few years. I bought a Keurig because everybody was saying, get a Keurig, they're awesome. Yeah, I've had 2 and they last a period of time and then they just stop. So I'll be treating myself to a cup of coffee later today outside somewhere while browsing new coffee makers, Nathan.
Ooh, I hope you find a great place.
Yeah, I will. But that was not what you asked me. You asked me to introduce myself. So sorry, I got sidetracked.
It's all right. It's always nice to talk about coffee. Trevor, glad you made it too. Yeah, so tell us, Jenny, a little bit about you, about what you do.
Well, my name is Jenny Maxwell and I'm from Ireland. I moved with my family 12 years ago from Dublin, my husband and my 2 boys. Jonah is 19 and Danny is 15. And we live here in Chicago and I'm a personal development coach. What else can I tell you?
Well, tell us about, there's 2 things that I'm kind of interested in. First of all, how did you get into coaching? What was it that drew you to this kind of work?
I never believed for a second that I would be doing the work that I'm doing today. I grew up working in the entertainment industry for a long time. Once I had my boys, I sort of left theater shows and TV work behind and I started doing voiceover work. And then my husband had an opportunity to come and get a visa and work in the United States. And he's like, oh, let's give it a go. And I thought that my work would transfer over here, and it didn't because I don't sound like everybody. So yeah, I have an agent and I do the Kerrygold ads once a year. because the Irish butter is like, or something for Paddy's Day. That's about it. And for a long time, I had become a fitness instructor, and I taught dance as well. And I was trying to recreate the success that I had in Ireland while trying to navigate what it was like living in a new country without your family and friends here. And I found it very challenging. So after about 9 years or so, I was in a very dark place, like very unhappy, and very much had this expectation that somebody else was going to change things for me, that it was somebody else's responsibility to make me happy, that it was Dave's fault that we were living in America and now I can't go back to Ireland because my kids are so happy in school, and poor me, poor me. And a very good friend of mine could see all this, and she gave me this beautiful invitation to sort of step outside of myself. And she said, can you come and give your time in non-for-profits? So she worked for a non-for-profit, and she said, like, just come and give us 2 or 3 hours a week. And I started becoming a delivery angel for them. And I felt it was just wonderful to be, first of all, part of the community and being of service, recognizing like, oh, it's not actually that bad. What I have is actually much better than a lot of what some people are going through if they're, in sickness or whatever else. And I really enjoyed it. So I sort of craved more of that. And I started becoming more interested in other non-for-profits and started doing some fundraisers out of my house. And we did a big fundraiser one year for a local homeless shelter, and we raised a lot of money. And it felt good to have the whole community, not the whole community, but like at various times, the whole community would get involved and get behind like a kid or a mom in need or a family in need or this homeless shelter. Like everybody came and played a game of bunco. And we had just the best night, and we raised like $1,500 or something. It was crazy. But the head judge of our county happened to be, he was there, he's a friend of ours. And he said to me, come and take a tour of the Juvenile Justice Centre. And I had no idea why he wanted me to go in there. But when I got into that space, I was blown away, first of all, because it was hidden. And I was sort of tucked away. I never knew it was there after 9 years of living here. I never even knew it was there. But I loved the system that they had in place for the kids. It was basically a holding center before they got before the judge, or that they were released back out to the community or whatever. And the staff in there were just phenomenal. It's very challenging work. And I wanted to help any way that I could, because I was so interested. I'm like, well, what can we do? What can the community do? And they were hugely resistant because they hadn't had anybody ask them. And I said, yeah, because nobody knows you're here, because you're doing such a good job. If you were doing something, if you were doing a bad job, it'd be in the papers, but you're doing so well, nobody knows that you're here. And like, how can we help? I know the community wanted to help. So because I had like knowledge of non-for-profits in the area, I started putting together the puzzle. I'm like, do the kids know that this is available to them? Do you know that this is available to you? So we updated some things that were in there. For example, kids that would come in with nothing. We now have a store of clothes that are in there so that they get to choose stuff that they want to take with them when they leave. They don't leave with like a black sack anymore. Everybody leaves with their own case that they fill, that the staff fill. And it had this like ripple effect where the workers felt good about the work they were doing because they felt like they were adding even more value. The kids felt good because they discovered that they matter, that they're seen in the community, and the community want to help. And I just wanted more of that. So I had an idea one day, and I went to the program manager and I said, what if we could give the kids a choice? Because that was something I noticed that was really missing. They had to get up at a certain time, and they had to eat at a certain time, and they have to go to school, and all of those things, those systems are in place to set boundaries and to try and draw out like good behavior. But I said, what if they had an option to be curious about something they might like to create, instead of going back to the family that they not the family, but like the family values, I guess. Some kids come from, their dad went to prison, so they feel like they're going to go to prison, or their brothers were in gangs, so they've got to be in gangs. And they don't consider that there might be another option for them. So I said, what if we gave them a choice and we created this little roadmap for them? And they, like a game, because I don't want to do anything if it isn't fun. Let's make it like it would be like a maze that you would do with your kids. So they would put their name in the top left-hand side, and then they would put whatever they wanted to do. And side note, most of them want to be tattoo artists. So they would put down like the bottom right-hand side what they wanted to do. And then they would draw the map to their goal, but they would also draw in the obstacles, like anything they thought might get in their way. And she was really curious about this. And I'm like, but here's where the choice comes in. They can say, no, I don't want to do it. They can say, yeah, I want to do it, but I don't want to share it. Or they can say, yeah, I want to do it, and I want to share it with my probation officer. And this was very different for me, because in the past, like, I'm a recovering people pleaser. So I would be the one who would jump in and try and fix things for other people. Even if they weren't asking me for help, somebody would come with an issue and I'd be like, you know what you should do? And it is almost like the worst thing that we can say to a person is, you know what you should do? Because what we're really saying is, I don't believe you have the power to figure this out on your own. Let me tell you how it's going to go down. And none of us want to be told what to do. So we road tested this option. And some of the kids said no. And then there was this one kid who straight away knew what her obstacles were. She knew she wanted to be a mechanic. And she wrote down like 5 things that were getting in her way. And she was like an open share. And we thought, like, this is something we could really use. And then I got curious about, I wonder if this would work out and about in the real world. Like, I wonder, is this true for a lot of us? Do we have these obstacles in our head and we stack them on top of one another, and we get in the way of us saying yes to ourselves in some way, or going after something, or we start thinking like, oh, it's probably not going to work out for me. I'm probably not going to do it. So I road tested it on a neighbor who was complaining about, she was feeling really stuck. And I said, would you be willing to do this little exercise? And it was the same thing, Nathan. It was the same thing. And I thought, if this was a job I could do, I would do this for the rest of my life. It's not about telling anybody what to do. It's helping them. It's establishing the gap. It's helping them identify what the obstacles are, and then realizing that, oh, I'm the common denominator in all of my problems here. I'm the obstacle, and I'm choosing to stay where I am, even though on the other side of this might be something I really, really want. So I asked a couple of friends. I'll stop talking in a minute. Sorry, I'm going on.
No. Keep going.
I asked a friend of mine I asked 2 friends that are coaches. One of them said to me, well, it's not really anything that you'll ever make a living doing. And I thought that was interesting. And I thought, I wonder if that's just true for her. But my other friend said, oh my gosh, you should totally do this. If nothing else, Jenny, you'll learn so much about yourself. And it would be like such a great investment of your time and your money. And I think you'd be a great coach. And I thought, I'm going to go with that friend.
Right. I like that
go with her.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like several years ago, I'd actually looked into coaching, and really I was at like probably the lowest point. I had no self-esteem. I was like waiting for other people to give me suggestions. And then I'd feel like the nerve of them. I'd feel resentful that they thought they had all of the answers. But I did share with one person I thought was a friend that I was looking at being a life coach, and she shot me down. She said, I don't even think that's a real job. In fact, I think it's a BS career, and I don't know why anybody would want to do it. And I was like so low in myself. I had no belief in myself or my abilities. I listened, and I just put it aside for like 4 or 5 years until you got to go through all the mud and the the stuff before you get fed up of your own BS, and you go, I think on the other side of this has to be something better. There has to be a greater experience than what I'm going through right now. And the juvenile center changed my life. Getting to be a part of their process and their journey has altered the course of my whole life. And I wouldn't trade any of the pain and misery for what I have right now. So that's how I got here.
I love it. And I know Amber said that she didn't know this about your story. Like I didn't either. Like I didn't know that this was the path that brought you here. I think that it's
I love what Amber says. She doesn't usually get to talk because she's busy listening.
I mean, no, fair enough. Like
It's true.
I should like screenshot this and turn it into a post.
That's hilarious. She's so right.
Well, she is. And I think for me, that's part of the point of this show too. Like I know a lot of coaches, professionally, your job is to listen. Your job is to help, those clients in those meetings. If you're doing your job, nobody notices, right? Like that's like you were saying earlier, right? Like if you're doing a really good job, you're not out there, as opposed to someone who's like a graphic designer and somebody's looking at like a billboard and they're like, oh, wow, that's so beautiful. Like it becomes about the clients. So, here it can be about you. It's cool.
Well, I think the role of a coach is to help the client be the hero of their own story. So when I read posts or I see coaches saying things like, I got my client to, I'm like, what? They did the work. It's not about you. You're making it about you.
Yeah.
They did the work. You helped them create a system and you definitely guided them. You helped them navigate their way out of what they were experiencing to what they have right now. But you don't get to own their journey, because that's not what coaching is all about. So you got to set your ego aside if you have one, I believe very strongly.
No, I think so too. I mean, I had a conversation one time with somebody who spent like a lot of the time talking about like the great things about their clients, but it was a great thing about like what their clients said about them. And I'm like, I would be more convinced if you just talked about where your clients ended up for themselves rather than how that reflected on you. Like the proof is in the pudding. Like I'll see it in action if you tell me about them. But I'm over here taking notes as you're talking, because like I love so many of the things you said about. One of those things was that you had the friend who's like, you can't really make a living doing that work, right? Like I think for a lot of coaches, and you can tell me how this clicks for you, like you don't find yourself in the work because you're concerned about making a living. Like you're trying to make a life, right? Like you're trying to make a life of purpose for yourself where you're doing something that you see helping others.
What's the question? Sorry.
Well, just if it clicks for you that it's less important that you're making a living and more important that you're making a good life, that there are deeper issues that you're chasing, you're not chasing money. I think we have this thing with coaching where, because of some of the social media about coaches, and I know you were talking about social media on, I think it was in the post that you mentioned it. We get this glamorized version of the perfect coach's life, and they make their own schedules and they're just making tons of money and they have a few virtual chats with people and then they're on the beach.
I know
that's not what it's about, right?
But if it's about that for them, good for them.
Well, right.
So like there's an opportunity to like let go of any judgment. But I'm like, I'm not really interested in that story. Like, good for you. If you have all of this stuff, I'm sure you worked very hard. But how about you share the process of getting there instead of telling us what you have right now, so that the rest of us, normal humans that are trying to build something here, don't feel like we're less than. Or we don't start like sitting in comparison mode. Or maybe I'm not a good coach because I don't think I have what they claim to have. And I heard this expression years ago and I thought, oh, that's true. Believe nothing that you see and only half of what you hear. Because people can say anything on social media and they can take photographs and, we know this like long before I became a coach, and I was on like Facebook and I'm looking at like these perfect families. And I had this one friend and she would like project this image of her family life being perfect. But I knew that wasn't actually the reality. But it was so important for her to show this version of her that she wasn't actually willing to show the truth of it all. So I celebrate like any coach or any person in any profession who has made a success. I'm like, good for you. How about you tell the rest of us how we might get a little smidgen of that, or how we might elevate where we currently are to such a place where we could have a greater experience in our life. Share that piece. Like, I could care less if you're driving a Mercedes or if you have 2 homes. I don't care about that. That's great. Tell me how I might like level up in some way. How might I learn from you? And that's actually very powerful for anybody that's listening today that could be sitting in comparison mode because of what you're reading on social media. It might not be true. And even if it is true, what are you making it mean about you? You're on a journey just like they were on a journey. You get to create whatever you want. So surround yourself with people that you can learn from and let go of that notion that you're less than just because you're not where they are. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and the thing with social media that gets us too is that these are snapshots. It's like meeting someone on the street and you have a conversation with them and you find out a little bit about them. Well, you've just met them at this one point in the overarching history of their life. There's a lot that's gone on before that. And to be on, square one or square two of your journey and try and compare yourself to someone who's on square 35, like that's not going to help you. You got to find somebody who's a little bit ahead of you and can speak to like, okay, I remember where you are and I'm not that far away. And here are, like you said, the things you can do to level up just a little bit, because it's a process. You can't jump from the start to the end that quickly.
Sorry, my dog is in the podcast with me.
I'm
You're
glad
good,
to
Mac.
have, that bark of agreement. That was clearly,
I think he really concurs.
Good.
And the thing is, like, to be if these people that you're following online, like, ask yourself, like, where's the value in giving my time and energy to this person? Are they aligned with my core values? Because if they're not aligned, maybe they're not a great person for you to be following anyway. But if they're approachable in some way, maybe you can ask them, if you were going back and doing it all again, what would you do differently? And that's another way to get out of comparison mode. You could say, like, here's where I am right now. Is there anything that you might share that could help me along a little bit? And usually they say, oh, you know what I wouldn't do? X. And then you go, oh, that's what I'm doing right now. Maybe I'll change it. And already you're leveling up.
Right.
You're already leveling up. So who you surround yourself with in person and online is very important.
This reminds me of what you said about with the kids, the idea of like giving them the choice, right? And giving them the option to be curious, to ask questions about where you are and where you could be. A lot of us look at social media can be very cut and dry. It's very, this is what it is and this is what it's not, because it's this attention driven, like you have to be very extreme to get points across, to get people to interact with things. People phrase things and talk about things often in ways that are very extreme and very kind of plainly put, but there's a lot of questions that can be asked there. There's a lot to learn if you take the time to choose being curious about it.
It's true.
When you are doing the work that you're doing now, you had this realization through working with the kids, and now you're finding other folks to work with. Do you have specific types of clients that are your favorites to work with? Like, what do you look for when you think about ideal clients?
I think for me, it's important, if a person is going to invest in themselves, they've got to be ready to fully invest and commit to the process. And that requires being honest. Like, it's important for me to create a safe space for people to want to share. There has to be trust. And sometimes a person is like laying it all out on the table in session 1, and I'm like, awesome, good for you. And sometimes it takes a minute. For me, it took a minute, because for a long time I was thinking it's everybody else's fault. Oh, it's everybody else needs to change. It's not me. I'm like, oh, wait a minute. It is me. It is me, because wherever I go, there I am. I was people pleasing in Ireland and I'm people pleasing in America. I am the common denominator. So it's me that needs to do the work. So that took me, I was my first client. So obviously you are, when you go through the coaching, the experience of a coaching certification, you become your first client, because you're applying all of the new learnings to your own life, and you're figuring out like what might need to change, or where is there a shift possible, or how can I do things differently? And that's a process in and of itself. So I forget what you asked me. I went off on a little tangent.
Well,
Sorry.
just about clients, like what
So
makes your ideal client? What kind of folks do you like to work with?
So when somebody is coming to me, like, okay, so here's a great example. Like, I do not work with everybody. I don't. I did in the beginning. And what I realized was sometimes if you take on a person who's not a good fit or not really ready to commit to the change work, because a lot of the work happens in between our sessions. They'll get a mindset shift. There'll be something that will resonate, or many things that will resonate in a session, but it's going to be up to the client to actually follow through on action steps and apply that knowing in order to see any lasting change. So in the beginning, I would say yes to clients. And with one of them, I ended up firing a client on session 10 because I realized, like, this feels like pushing water up a hill. That's what it felt like every week. And I found myself before the session, like, almost like, please let this person have made some tiny little change in the week. And then you see, I was making it about what I wanted as this person's coach. But I can't want it more than my client. Like, they have to do the work. And I asked in the session when I realized, no, nothing has changed. Nothing has changed. I said, are you doing this for me or for you? And they said a little of both. And I said, okay, so if you could let go of any sort of pressure or feeling that I expect something from you, and you could just make it all about you, are you truly committed to making any change? And there came the honesty finally after 10 weeks. And they said, I just don't think this is the right time for me.
Yeah.
So I'm like, well, then we got to let it go. So now I can tell. Like, I've done many chats in person. I've done discovery calls. I've met people out and about who've been curious about coaching. And I think my spidey senses are heightened now, where I go, I guess I see little red flags and I ask some questions. And if a person is not holding the belief that they have the power within them to create change that will affect the rest of their life, if they're leaning on, no, it's not me, it's my husband. I had this last week. It's my husband and my mother-in-law and my sister-in-law, and it's the office manager at work, and it was everybody else but her. I said, I don't think I'm the right coach for you. So I don't know if that answers your question. I think I look for somebody to come from an honest place, to feel committed and to feel hungry for what's possible. What's possible on the other side of this? Am I really willing to go there and let go of these old habits, let go of these old stories, and start creating a new system so that I step into the highest version of myself?
I love it. I've heard people talk about how there are certain folks who are not in a coachable time of their life, or they don't have a coachable mindset. Like, they're just not ready for it. And if they're not, you can't push the river, as Gretchen likes to say.
It's exhausting.
We're coming up on just a minute or so left, everybody. I want to throw Amber's comment up here real quick, because Amber, has started her classes. Jenny, it's awesome that she was able to talk to you and you were able to help her get going on that. She's just a couple of steps ahead of me on this, because I'm getting ready to try and find a program to get into too. So these are conversations that are going on and they're fun to have. So I appreciate you being such a big part of that.
Yeah, pleasure.
What is the best way for everybody to get in touch with you?
Well, I have a brand spanking new website.
Ooh.
Yeah. It's Jenny. I had to think about it. I'm like, what is the name of the website?
It's that new.
It's my name, jennymcoaching.com. I know. You see, no coffee. Look what happens.
Wow.
Jenny,
you did good. You remembered it.
jennymcoaching.com. And on that website is really, it's a very good way to to like find out who I am and people I have helped, what they have to say about their journey, what the coaching process looks like, who I don't work with, which I was very happy to put out. Like, don't come to me if I'm not the coach for you. If, and I think that's important, because people might be like, oh, well, she's not going to do this and I don't want to do that. And then there's no time wasted or energy wasted. So thank you, Ashley. Oh my gosh.
Ashley, hey man.
Yeah.
Awesome.
He's awesome. He's so fun.
I know, he really is. He was my first guest, on the show. He's
No
like
way.
He's got like a special little place in this community.
Yeah.
So as we get ready to sign off here, we always pause at the end and let you give us something to think about. So what's kind of the biggest takeaway, the last thing that you would want us to remember and kind of carry with us?
Okay. If you are a person who's feeling like you're not where you should be right now, I would love for you to hit pause and just celebrate how far you've come to this point, with all of the challenges and struggles and maybe those limiting beliefs or any little story that's crept in that is telling you this might not work out or creating pressure in some way. Celebrate how far you've come and know that at any point in your life, if you have been successful, tap into that version of you, because if you've had it before, you can have it again. Believe.
I love it. If you've had it before, you can have it again.
Agreed. If you've been confident before, you can be confident again.
Great. Jenny, thank you so much. It has been such a delight being live with you on the show here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a pleasure. Everybody come back next Wednesday. Danielle, Amy will be here with me, noon Eastern. And we'll see you then. Everybody have a good Wednesday.